Jace. So yeah, hello everyone. To our first Q&A during Plastic Free July. I'm super stoked to have Jace Tunnell with me here from Mission Aransas. And Jace is actually best known for his work on Nurdles. And if you don't know what that is, I think Jace is probably the best to actually explain it to you right now, to talk a little bit about his program. And yeah, Jace, maybe you just want to start introducing yourself and tell us about your amazing work in Texas.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Jace Tunnell with the Mission Aransas Research Reserve. There's actually 29 reserves around the country, and we're the only one in Texas. And we do research and education and outreach. But we're located at the University of Texas Marine Science Institute in Port Aransas, Texas. And one of the projects that we started up about a year and a half ago is called Nurdle Patrol. And so people are always asking us, what in the world? You mean Turtle Patrol? I was like, well, no, we have Turtle Patrol too. But it's kind of a play on words. But Nurdle Patrol, Nurdles are little tiny plastic pellets that are the raw material to almost everything plastic. So, the computer screen or your phone or your car, the sunglasses you wear, almost all of that was first a little plastic pellet. And it's the size of a lentil, so it's real small. And it's what we're finding washing up on the beaches are a couple of different types of plastic, and that's the polypropylene and the polyethylene. So those are the two most common. Now, why aren't we finding like PVC and PET and some of those other types of plastic? It's because those are higher density and likely they're out there, but they're just sinking once they reach into the waterways. So do you want me to talk a little bit about Nerdle Patrol and how people can get involved maybe?
Exactly. Yeah, just go and give us the spiel about all the things you always like to talk about. So.
Okay. Well, first people are saying, okay, now I know what Nurdles are. How are they getting into the environment? And that's a really good question. We had the same question when back in late September, we found millions of pellets washing up on our beach here in Texas. And so we were asking, how did these get here? And so we started up the program where people go out for 10 minutes. And when they find their first nurdle on the beach, they start their clock for 10 minutes. And then whenever they get to that 10-minute mark, they count how many nurdles they found. And then they go to nurdlepatrol.org and they put their concentration of pellets that they found. And that is helping us try to determine where these are coming from. And so what the data is showing us so far, and there's been over 5,400 surveys that have been done just in that year and a half, is that these pellets have the highest concentrations up in the bay systems where the plastic manufacturing facilities are. And so likely the pellets are getting out either at the manufacturing site. They're also getting out during transportation. So these plastic manufacturers make the pellets, but then they have to send them to distributors that then sell them to different folks that melt them down, put color to them, make them into an actual product. And so all along the supply chain, these pellets are getting out. But we're finding the highest concentrations around the manufacturing sites. And so then the next question is, it's like, well, why do we care? Well, the biggest impact is probably wildlife. Aesthetically, we don't like to see them on the beach. And really, they look like something natural. They look like fish eggs, seeds, things like that. And so it's hard to find them. And so that's likely why we haven't heard much about them before, is because people just didn't notice them. But we know that there's hundreds of species of animals that eat these, including birds, sea turtles, and fish. And, the pellets themselves, if they were raw, likely many animals just pass them through their system and there's not any impact. But when there's a lot of them, there's no nutritional value to these. The animal could starve to death. It could block their intestinal tract if they eat enough of them. And so there's definitely some damaging effects from them. So with Nerdle Patrol, we're not only trying to count the concentrations of them, but also remove them from the beach. That's an added benefit to the project. So let's see, we talked about what the impacts are, how people can get involved. If you want to try to pick up some of these pellets, you want to do a survey yourself. People ask me, how do I become involved in this as well? Well, just go to the beach and do your own survey. Spend 10 minutes when you're at the beach. And if you find some pellets, or if you don't, because zeros are data as well. So if you don't find pellets, we want to record that as well. So you just go to nerdlepatrol.org, and there's a button on there for record your data. And then you fill out a little form that takes you probably 2 minutes, and you can automatically go to the map and see your data on that map. And it's like a Google Earth type platform where you can zoom in or zoom out. You can print the map up that has your data and everyone else's data on it. And you can show it to your elected officials. You can show it to your state agency that's supposed to be regulating these companies, and try to make change. And so that's what we're shooting for with Nerdle Patrol, is changing policy. And since the data is showing the highest concentrations at these manufacturing sites, where the pellets spill on the ground, it rains, these pellets get in their stormwater and then out into the ocean, that's where we think we can have the biggest impact. So we're working with state agencies on changing their language in the stormwater permit to say 0 pellet discharge, rather than most states in the country right now actually allow for minute amount of suspended solids. So a lot of these companies' stormwater permits don't even say plastic in them. It talks about suspended solids and stuff like that. So we're trying to change that, and we're having some good luck with it. And there's some political leaders that are standing up and saying, yeah, this isn't right. We're going to author a bill and try to make change. And so that's one big thing we're doing. We actually just got $1 million from a big settlement of a plastics company that was here in Texas that Diane Wilson and San Antonio Bay Estuarine Waterkeepers had sued Formosa Plastics. Formosa settled for $50 million for discharging pellets. And then Nerdle Patrol is getting $1 million of that. And so last week we just got our first check. It's supposed to be paid over 5 years. We got our first check for $200,000. So we've got a person that we're hiring that's going to be an assistant that's going to create these starter kits. And so we want to be able to get Nerdle Patrol in every community in every state in the U.S. that has not only plastic manufacturing facilities, but anywhere. They could be rivers. It could be the Great Lakes. They're finding lots of them in the Great Lakes. Because remember, it's all about transportation. And the more data we have, the more we can really create change. And so these starter kits, if there's communities that are interested in starting up their own citizen science project for Nerdle Patrol, putting their data into the website, then we will send them sampling, glass sampling bottles. We're going to send T-shirts, and we're going to send flash drives that have presentations that they can cater to their own organization, so that they can do a presentation like I'm doing now. But it'll be with their logo. We want Nerdle Patrol is not a Mission Aransas. It's not a University of Texas deal. This is supposed to be something that communities can take and make their own. And then they use the nerdlepatrol.org as their space where they can put their data, so that we're all working together towards the same goal of making change.
And that's absolutely incredible. And I think I just wanted to point out, because not everybody lives on the coast. And I think like you mentioned it, it's really not about only living on the coast and collecting, right? It's really everywhere where we live, landlocked or not. There is the chance of nurdles, and there's also the chance of those nurdles ending up in our waterways. So I just want to encourage everyone to really think about what they can do, even when they live far, far, far away from the ocean. Yeah, that is, I just love your work, Jace. That's incredible. And you already mentioned some of the effects that nurdles have, but now I have to disclose, I saw some of your Facebook posts recently, but do we already know anything about chemicals that, if in case you would ingest it, or we would ingest it, or animals would ingest it, that would actually harm us, endocrine disruptors, or anything that is maybe even accumulating on the nurdles?
Oh, yeah, good question. There's a couple of things there that you hit on, but the chemicals, so these plastic pellets, once they're in the environment, they start absorbing chemicals, harmful chemicals, and like PAHs that they use for roadways, PCBs, which is in lighting fixtures and things like that, DDT, which they used to spray all over the place, that's banned in the U.S. now, but it's not in other countries. But these are chemicals that you don't want touching your skin. You don't want to eat them. And it's the same thing for, wildlife and turtles and things like that. We don't want them eating these plastic pellets that have chemicals in them, because the real fear is that these chemicals could leach out once it's in the body. Do those chemicals leave the plastic and then go beyond the stomach lining of the animal? We don't know that answer yet, but I have a feeling, there's a lot of research and stuff going on with that right now. So I have a feeling in the next few years, we'll probably have the answer to that, if chemicals are actually leaving the stomach lining of, say, a fish and then into their muscle tissue that we're actually eating. That's definitely, we don't want that, because then there's a human health risk there. And so we don't quite have that answer yet, but I have a feeling we will very soon. And the other thing is, so that was chemicals, but there's also, algae and bacteria that grow on these plastic pellets. And since they can float, they're in the ocean's currents, they could travel all over the world. What type of bacteria, what kind of algae is on there that is become an invasive species or an exotic species in another country. And so we're always fearful of that in the biology world, of, impacts of something that doesn't naturally and normally live there getting into an area and then having impacts on the native plants and animals that are in an area. So those are all good points. So did we leave you? Did we lose you, Christine? Are you still there? Okay. Well, maybe I'll keep talking. Oh, here she comes. I can keep talking about Nurdles all day. I'll say that I was talking earlier about this Formosa case money that we were receiving and doing the starter kits and things like that. But we've hired somebody that's going to be working to be able to host a plastic pollution symposium annually. And so that will be going on hopefully in the fall every year. Although with COVID this year, we're rethinking the timing of that plastic pollution symposium, and we're going to be moving that hopefully to March 2021. But we're hoping that that's going to be hosted somewhere in Texas, and likely South Padre Island is what we're hoping for. But for any students out there that are interested, if say you're doing research or something like that, we do have money that we're going to be giving to students to be able to attend the meeting. And so, we'll pay for travel, pay for hotel, food and stuff like that for students. And so there'll be more coming out on that once we get all that lined up. The other thing is we're going to be creating a phone app. And so right now, whenever you want to put your data in, you actually go you can use your phone, but you'd have to go through the internet. But we're going to create a phone app that links directly to the database. And so that's a feature that we're contracting with someone right now that's starting to create this phone app for Nerdle Patrol. And I think that'll be a lot of fun for folks to be able to use. Okay, Christine, can you hear me? Have any more questions for me? Okay, otherwise I'll talk about something else we got going on. There's a couple things. One is, we've got a number of different proposals out that we're looking for funding for. And so one of them is, I talked about the chemicals in the plastic pellets. So one of the things we want to look at is, since these plastic pellets, they're a good indicator of water quality. And since they absorb different types of chemicals, you can really see what your water quality is like in an area. So we're looking for funding for trying to map out those chemicals in the plastic pellets in particular areas. We've got videos, a number of videos that have already been done by Enlighten Images. They've created some promotional type videos. But they're also working on a documentary right now on something that we did last summer. Is we did what we called the Nerdl Expedition, and we went to every accessible point in the Gulf of Mexico on the U.S. side, so all 5 states, and sampled and gave presentations every day to communities to show them how to do surveys and tell them what we're finding, and met with media. And we did a 10-day excursion with that, me and my colleague, Sam Shigarik. And so that's actually going to be a documentary that's coming out, about a 15-minute documentary. And so hopefully with the next couple of months, we'll be able to get that documentary out. And then there's some other videos that we're planning on making over this next year that are not only entertaining, but show you how to get involved with the...
I don't see you. So if you guys can hear me, great. I don't see anyone. I'm set, or like I'm told I'm in the backstage area right now.
Oh, we can see you. Can you hear me? We can see you.
Okay, great.
Okay, you got any more questions for me? I've just been sitting over here talking.
It tells me the host has muted your mic and only the host can see me.
Okay. Okay. Well, let's see what else I can talk about here. Christine, can you hear me now?
I'm sorry about that, Jace.
That's fine. Can you hear me?
Yeah, there's no change even if I update.
Okay. Hopefully they can edit that out. But so we have,
I guess.
If you go to nerdlepatrol.org and you look at the news, so anytime something interesting or we think cool happens or something like that, we've got a writer, Ira Das. She lives out in San Francisco, and she's a high school student out there, and she's been writing papers or articles for us on Nerdle Patrol. Real good writer. And so if you get a chance to go there, we usually have a number of different...
So I'm going to just turn it off because I can't see anything.
Okay. So you can go there, check out some of those. The other thing is, if y'all are interested, like every other group, they have a Facebook page. And so we have, it's a closed group. So Nerdle Patrol, look on Facebook. There's people that post almost on a daily basis on what they're finding with their surveys. They're also posting any kind of news that comes out about it, not necessarily nurdles, but even microplastics and things like that. So we were talking about animals that eat microplastics and nurdles and things like that. If something comes out in the news, within hours, it's posted there to the Facebook page. Since it's a closed group, you have to request to be on there, but then I'll let you in. And the reason we keep it closed group and not open to everybody is because there's a lot of plastic industry folks on there. There's regulatory agency folks on there that are wanting to keep up with what is coming out from Nerdle Patrol. And some of those folks, if they comment stuff like that, they might not want their coworkers or something to see. So anyway, we just kept it closed group. But there's a lot of good information in there, and I'd suggest y'all get on there if you can. Okay, any other questions?
There are.
Okay.
I jumped in for Chris because of all the technical difficulties. So we have a few questions from people who wanted to talk to you. So one person asked if you are seeing any changes with the industry as a result from our awareness and all of our efforts that we're making as a community.
Yes, absolutely. And so every once in a while, plastics industry folk will get a hold of me, and they want to meet and tell me about the things that they're doing. And so there's one group in particular. I was telling them about the railroads and how we've done over 50 samples on railroads, and you can almost always find nurdles on a railroad track. If that track is used for transporting pellets, then you can find that. And so in over 5 states, at over 50 locations, we found pellets on the railroads, which is crazy because some of these are really inland. So anyway, this guy got a hold of me and said, hey, we've been watching your Nerdle Patrol map and the data's pop up, and we noticed those ones that are inland. And we've been trying to figure out why they're along the railroads. And so he said and I just met with this guy about 2 weeks ago, and he told me the last 6 months that they had been tracking their rail cars. And he said he knows that when the rail cars leave their facility, they're tied up, the caps are, and their valves are closed, because he said those are the only 2 ways that pellets and those types of rail cars can get out. And so he said they're fine when they leave, but whenever the rail cars have to come back, when they're empty, that's when the pellets are spilling out. And so what happens whenever they pneumatically blow these pellets into a rail car, they get hot. And so some of them can melt and create these strings, and they get stuck inside of the vessel. So that whenever they get to the final destination and the pellets are sucked out, some of them are still stuck in there because of those melted plastics. And so the person who's emptied it, he just leaves the cap off, or they just leave the valve open because they think the rail car is empty. And so that car starts coming back to the facility to be cleaned and all that. Well, as it goes along the rail car, it's bouncing and everything, and pellets are dribbling out the whole way back. And so they said that they started going back to, because they can track who was the actual person who was in charge of unloading that rail car. So they've been going back to that person, the people, and then requesting that they do, put the cap back on and close the valves, and that's how they want them back at their site. And so, we're seeing change from that as well. We're also seeing that, at least in Texas here, the state agency, they saw that there was a problem in the state of Texas with the pellets. And so they're actually creating language to put into the stormwater permits for all new and renewing plastic companies that have 0 pellet loss in there. And so, that's huge. And so what I tell people is, like, if it can be done in Texas, it can be done anywhere in the U.S. And so because, just because of the way, Republican state here, but, really pro-business. But I think it doesn't matter what side you're on there. It's like, the plastics industry doesn't want to lose these pellets either, because that's how they make their money. And especially if they're being blamed for, high concentrations of pellets getting out into the environment, they want to solve the problem. And so I think now that this map is showing where the problems are, and it's all over the country, even although Texas has the highest concentrations for sure, people want to figure that out. And that includes regulatory agencies and business. And so everyone's working together. And so the Nerdle Patrol is really helping to push that forward, and really, it couldn't be done without citizen scientists, the volunteers collecting the data. And I want to thank them. So anytime I give a presentation, and I've given over 50 presentations over this last year just on this subject, I always thank the volunteers, because this project does not exist without them. And it does not exist without the partners that are willing to start up their own Nerdle Patrol in their own communities. And so the thanks really goes to them on seeing the change that's happening.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's definitely a group effort from people like yourself leading this change, to just people like myself who want to make a difference and want to learn from people like you, from people like Christine. But with these pallets that are falling off of these in the train tracks, what's happening with them? Are they being picked up, or are they just being left there?
Whenever the pellets are in, they're kind of big reservoirs inside of these trains. So there's 4 big reservoirs in one rail car. And so when the pellets fall out, they're not being picked up. Yeah, nobody's picking them up unless there's a big spill or something, and it's real apparent. But the problem is these railroads are made with large rocks. And so, once the pellets fall out, they get in those rocks, and then you can't really see them until it rains. Then the rainwater flushes them out into the ditch, and then into the nearest creek or river, then to the bay, then to the ocean. That anything that falls on the ground is subject to make it to the ocean. And so that's what I always tell people: you see a piece of trash, I don't care if you're up in Colorado or somewhere, it's like, pick it up, because that's going to be in the Gulf of Mexico.
Definitely. Yeah, I've seen it myself, just going around the neighborhood or going hiking, like you said, up in Colorado, or just hiking somewhere in Arizona. We see so much people just littering, leaving things behind, not really knowing what's going to happen to it, thinking that it's gonna find its place, it's gonna find its way back to somewhere. But we really start to notice once we see it actually happening. We see, after watching these movies, like the story of plastic, that we really see where everything goes and how it's this big, huge crisis that we have the power to fix because we're the ones who had the power to create it in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
But then we have another question, basically asking, how are the industries adapting to the increase of pressure regarding plastic nurdle pollution?
Well, there is it was industry created about 25 years ago. It's called Operation Clean Sweep. Mm-hmm. And there's actually a new version that just came out a couple of years ago called Operation Clean Sweep Blue. It was created by the American Chemical Council, but it has a lot of best management practices in there for how to prevent pellets from getting into the environment. And so, a lot of the industries are jumping on the bandwagon to get on this. I mean, a lot of them have been in it for many years. What I try to point out is the Formosa plant was also, they're also a member of the Operation Clean Sweep. The problem with that program is that it's voluntary. And so you have some industries that are following it to a T and doing really good. And then you have other folks that are in there that aren't. And it's because it's voluntary. So we're asking regulatory agencies, say, look, you got a guidebook for best management practices right here. Why not take some of those and make them mandatory in for the inspections and in the permits and things like that. I mean, I think it's going to take a lot of time. We've had some folks come up with some great ideas of like, well, why do they make these small plastic pellets? They're hard to contain. Why not make them bricks or something like that are, like this big that they could send out everywhere? And the problem is there's been 70 years of infrastructure that's been built around these tiny plastic pellets. And so you can't just go in and start changing, how they're making products easily without probably trillions of dollars of investments by the companies. But I think that the plastics folks are feeling the pressure, and I think there's some other organizations like As You Sow that's out in California that has been really good about working with the industries and trying to make it more transparent. So when there is a spill, the companies that are involved in that transparency program have to tell the public, tell their stakeholders, we spilled 200 pounds of plastic pellets, and this was the date, and this was the type of plastic, and all that. So there's some sort of accountability, because right now there isn't. So a lot of work to still be done.
For sure. And would you say that the government is slowly starting to pick up on it and also trying to make a change for the better?
I'll say this is that so back in 1992, the Environmental Protection Agency, they wrote a report. Actually, they wrote a number of reports back in 1992 called Plastic Pellets in the Aquatic Environment, Sources and Solutions. And so, and that's a PDF. You can Google it and find all that out. But in that document, it talks about 80 different species of shorebirds that they knew about at the time that were eating these pellets. Turtles that had necropsies done, and there was pellets in their gut. Fish that are eating these. They even showed concentrations around the country of these. They knew it was a problem 30 years ago. But what changes have we seen? Very little. And so I think likely what we're probably going to see bigger change at is at the state level. So that's why Nerdle Patrol is trying to get different communities in each state to try to start collecting data, is because if we can make changes at the state level, we have a real chance of seeing fewer pellets reaching in the environment.
Definitely. So it is Plastic-Free July. Speaking about changes, what changes do you see yourself making, or do you see feasible for all of us individuals who don't have big pool with different industries, to basically change about our lifestyles, to restrict the plastic that we use in our lives, just to make a small difference? Because it does count today.
Yeah, absolutely. And it could actually be fun. So like, you do this for a whole month, and then hopefully it becomes, what you do all year is trying to reduce your use of plastic. Some of the basic things that people do already, and if Christine was on here, she'd be telling you, don't use a straw, right? Okay, she's famous for that one. But that's true, because, even that straw, you can't recycle that, or most places cannot recycle that straw because it's too small, even bottle caps, things like that. I always tell people with water, I'll go into meetings and everyone's got a ice cold water bottle, plastic water bottle that they're drinking it from. They drink it and then they throw it away. I'm thinking, there's a water fountain just right outside the door right there, If you're in a developed country like the United States, there is no reason that you should ever have to drink out of bottled water. And so I'll go thirsty. If for some reason, I didn't bring my reusable water bottle, I will not drink out of a plastic water bottle. And I tell people that too. So that's something I think that's huge. If everybody would stop everybody that has access to clean water will stop drinking out of, the single-use water bottles, that would be huge. That'd be huge. The other thing is, a lot of states and cities and stuff like that are trying to get plastic bag bans, and they've been trying to do that for a long time. In Texas, we're not actually allowed to do that because of some crazy laws that came up a couple of years ago. But that's a good one, is like reduce your use of using plastic bags. Now, the plastic industry right now is really trying to push that it's for safety. And so, you don't want to get COVID, you better use this single-use plastic. Well, I'm not buying that. So, there's a lot of good uses for plastic. That's for sure, especially in the medical field and cars and things like this. But the single-use stuff is what we're trying to get rid of. And so, plastic bags is one of those easy ones. Take a reusable bag if currently your state or city lets you do that. There's also, you can ask for paper. Sometimes what I do is if I go in and they say, well, you can't bring your reusable bag in and we don't have paper right now, we can only serve in single use, I say just put everything back in the cart. And I just take the cart and put everything in my back seat of my vehicle. So, do not take a plastic bag. And then a couple other things. So, and I don't know how much detail you wanted me to go into with this, but, but
as much as you want. The more ideas you have, the better, I believe.
So some crazy things we do here at my house here is we have, you think napkins, where you're like, well, that's paper. But how do napkins come in the store? They're wrapped in plastic, right? So you can actually reduce your use of plastic just by using things that have less wrapping with it. And so we use cloth napkins. And so, we use them, they get dirty, then we wash them. And then and paper towels are the same way. So we don't have napkins or paper towels in our household. We do have toilet paper. Okay, we're not crazy. No, we are crazy. I'm kidding. But so like trash. So our trash in our bathrooms, we have an old pillowcase that is our trash bag. And so, we dump it out. We can wash that and everything. And so that's another way, is like just trying to find, where do we use a lot of plastic and how can we reduce our use of that? And we do a lot of reusing of jars and stuff like that as well. And so it kind of gets fun after a while to see how can I use less plastic. Because, if you watch the story of plastic and all this, the recycling is not our way out of this mess. This plastic is not breaking down over time. It might break down into smaller and smaller pieces. And if you go to a high tide line almost anywhere in the country, almost anywhere in the world, you're going to find little bits of plastic in there. And that is not going to improve if we don't make a change. It's only going to get worse. And so I have people all the time say, why do we care? Why are we doing that? Well, I got a couple kids. And so that is kind of one of my motivations right there is like, we can make the change now. We have the information we need. We are old enough. We've got the contacts of people to make the change. We don't need to be pushing this off to the next generation because that's what the generations up till now have done. And so we need to do things differently.
Yeah, and I think it's an amazing reason to want to continue to help protect the environment, because continuing to push it off is just going to mean that it's going to get worse and harder to actually reverse. And at this point, it's not even reversible. We can only stop it from progressing, which is what we should all be fighting for at this point. And I've never heard the replacing the plastic trash bag with a pillowcase. That's definitely a creative one that is interesting, and it's not that difficult. I feel like there's so many people who also, once you have an old pillowcase, they just throw it away anyway. So you might as well find a creative way to reuse it, because those things also do stick around for quite some time.
Yep, that's right. Yep.
Well, that is everything that we have for you. Thank you so much for coming and talking to us about Nurdle Patrol, about all the plastic pollution and what you're doing for Plastic Free July, and how we can all basically step up and make the planet a little bit cleaner for future generations. And hopefully we can rid plastic from our households soon.
All right. Well, I'm on board with that. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Mm-hmm.